friends. It is I, your art teacher, Miss Claire. And of course, my pup Daisy is always around. So today we are going to be making some tie-dye color mixing sun catchers. So we're going to be using materials that are a little bit different. We're going to be drawing on materials that are a little bit different because usually we draw on paper. Today we're not going to draw on paper. So the materials we will need today are paper towels. So we don't really need more than one. One can be our surface. So we're going to use this to draw on. Mine's got a little water on it, but that's okay. So we're going to need a paper towel. And mine are these half sizes. Whatever size you have is totally fine. So paper towels. We also need some washable markers. So we're mostly going to be using primary colors today. And if you know what that means, it means the colors we use to mix everything, because we're going to do something in our process a little bit later to mix the colors. So that means yellow, red, and blue. I have two yellows in my hand. If you don't have primary colors like this, that's okay. Use something sort of similar. If you have an orange instead of a yellow, that's okay. So we're just going to use washable markers for this. So remember the primary colors. We've talked a little bit about color mixing before, because with these three colors, you can make almost any color. So remember that for a little bit later. All right, paper towels, washable markers. We're also going to need a tray of some kind, because the way that we're going to make our color mixing tie-dye sun catcher is we're going to add water and we need to contain it. So I have my tray that I'm going to be using, and we don't need this right away, but we will need something to kind of hold it. It can be almost anything that water can't get through. So something to hold this. You could even use a plate if that's helpful for you. Something that will hold your paper towel. All right. Now we're also going to need a little bit of water, but I think that we can talk about that when we get there. Okay. So first step is we need a paper towel for our drawing. Actually, I'm going to leave these two because they are a little bit wet, so I'll use those for something else later. Okay. So this is our drawing surface. Now you can also make it bigger if you want to. If you have a full-size paper towel, mine are half size. And paper towels are, they're a resource that we don't want to waste, so we want to be careful with how much we use. So I'm just probably going to use one today. Those ones that I ripped off before, I'm going to find another use for those because I don't want to waste anything. All right, now we have our primary colors, and I am just going to create some patterning on this. Now, we've talked a little bit about pattern before. It means it doesn't have to be like anything specific. It doesn't have to look like a person or a thing or an animal. It means it can be shapes that repeat if you want them to. So I'm actually going to show you an example of one that I just made, and I think you're going to be pretty excited about what we're doing. Are you ready? Okay, mine's still drying, but look at this beautiful tie-dye sun catcher. Now, I didn't go all the way around the edges, which we are going to do that now with the one that we're working on, but I think it turned out really pretty. So we are just going to color sections, and I'm going to start. Now you also might find that paper towels are not as easy to draw on as paper is, because they're kind of like thick and they have a little bit of texture, and that's okay. We don't have to fill it all in because we can have white spaces. It's okay because the water is going to help us. So like when I'm drawing on this with blue, you can see it doesn't really fill that well. And that's okay, I can leave those gaps because the water is gonna help us when we mix our colors. Now, like I said, if you don't have primary colors, that's okay. You can use something similar. We wanna try to use colors that are pretty different so that when they mix, we get a new color. So I wouldn't use just blue and green because those two are pretty similar to each other. I'm gonna use colors that are pretty different from one another. And I'm also trying to put colors that are different next to each other. So here I am putting my yellow next to my blue. I'm actually going to circle the blue. And like I said, we don't have to fill in everything. It's actually a little bit easier to leave a little space. See how I've got some holes in my yellow and in between my blue? That's okay. And you have the freedom to choose what kind of pattern you want to make. So see how I'm making lines? This is the way that I make patterns, especially because I know that they're going to get blended later. Do you know what blended means? It means we're going to mix them together. So sort of like when we're mixing paint or when you're cooking, we're blending things together to make something new. So because that's what we're doing here, I don't have to be super careful with my colors and filling in all the holes. This isn't a very good yellow, but that's okay. I'm really excited for when this is dry because I think it's going to look really pretty on my window. Especially because it's kind of tie-dye. Have you ever tie-dyed before? Tie-dye's pretty neat. I bet you guys have some tie-dye t-shirts somewhere. That's something I really like to do. I think the best part of tie-dye is when you're opening them up and you get to see for the first time how cool they are. This is going to be a little bit like that. What we're doing today is also something that we could call process art. And process art means that we're not really worried about how our picture or our project turns out at the end, because it's more about how we're making it. We're more excited about the process of making it and the techniques that we get to do and what we do with our hands. So thinking about how that's actually more important to us. If you remember when we made ocean paintings, that was also process art because we were working with the ocean paintings and we were shaping them and exploring the texture, and we were really more interested in how we made them than the paintings themselves. So that's something to think about. Think about how today we're really focusing on how we're making it. And we're not going to worry about how it turns out. Sometimes art is about just seeing what happens and accepting what happens. You know how sometimes when you make something and it doesn't turn out quite like you want it to and it's kind of hard? Well, we can transform it into something else. I know that that is sometimes so hard to get past when we're working on something and it just isn't working out the way that we want it to. I know that's really hard, but it takes practice. There's lots of things I make and I think, oh, this isn't the way I want it to be, but I try to turn it into something new. So if you are working on yours like I am, we want to fill most of our paper towel. I've almost filled it. I'm going to put a little more right here. Okay. Now I don't need to worry too much about the pattern because again, I'm going to get this wet and I'm going to lose all the lines that I made. Again, it's about the process, so you can't hold on to it too tightly. So here's my paper towel. Now, if you are completely finished, then you're ready to move on with me. If you're not, you might want to pause this to finish coloring. Now, this is where our tray comes in. I'm going to take my tray and I'm going to lay my paper towel on top of it. Now, I'm actually going to take you, I think I have a little bit of water on this, so it's already going to start. But I'm going to take you over to my sink because I'm just going to add a little bit of water. If you have a spray bottle with water, you could also lay this down and mist it. Spray a little bit of water. I don't have a spray bottle, so I'm just going to use the faucet, and I'm going to show you some other things I could do. Now, you could also use a cup of water, and something you can do is dip your fingers and sprinkle it like this, so I might do a little bit more of that. You could also use a paintbrush with water if you want. So I am going to take you over to my sink. Now I'm going to lay this on here, and it might start actually color mixing already, and we'll see. Okay, I'm bringing you over here because I want to show you how much water I'm going to use. Because I don't want to put too much water. You know how we've talked about not making a puddle in our picture? It's similar for a paper towel. You know, we are using a paper towel, which is meant to absorb liquid, but we don't want to rip it. We want to be careful not to rip it. So I am just going to make a really sort of slow stream. See that? Pretty low. I know it's a little hard to see. It's kind of far away, but it's not very much water. It's very little. And I am just going to run my picture under it. So it's actually kind of hard because I can't reach all of it, but that's okay. Now, I also can do this. I can use my hand and, you know, kind of get some water in here. You can see why we really needed a tray for this because I do not want to get color mixing water everywhere. Okay, now if it's not totally covered in water, that's okay because I'm going to show you something else I'm going to do now. Okay, so I've gotten this kind of wet and you can see I have a little bit more. It's not wet. Like I think this area right here is still dry, but you can also see some of this is blending together, which is pretty cool. Now, something else that I do, because I think it's really fun to play and see what happens, is I am going to kind of fold it gently. If you've ever done that with paper and paint where you fold it and get like a mirror, so the same on both sides, I'm going to do a little bit of that because when it touches, it's going to mix a little bit more. But I also want to be careful because my paper towel is wet, I don't want to rip it. And I don't want to just kind of get it all mixed up because do you remember what happens if we mix all the colors? We get like kind of a mucky brown. So I don't want to mix it all the way, but I want to do a little mixing. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to kind of fold it on itself a little bit. Now, wherever I touch is probably going to transfer to the other side. So do you see this yellow area? I'm going to touch that with a little bit of red on the other side. And then I got that. Do you see that darker color? So this area is from mixing that. So you can kind of fold it on itself, give it a little finger push. You're gonna get a lot more color going on. Doo-doo-doo. Now, do we remember how purple is made? Anybody remember what colors we used to make purple? So, red and blue. Now, you're probably going to see a lot of colors appearing on this because we're using red, yellow, and blue, which make most colors. When they mix, you get all the other colors. Like I'm actually seeing a lot of colors on here. So, purple, look at that, where the blue and the red mixed. I've also got some green going on over here. Does anybody remember how we made green? Yellow and blue. Now, the other color that we might start to see is orange because orange is made of red and yellow. So I'm actually starting to see some spots like here is kind of orangey. Pretty cool. So I might mix a little bit more. Remember, I don't want to get too wild because then I'm going to lose, you know, a lot of it might turn kind of a brownie color. I have the spot that's going to show you that. You see this? It's cool that I have this, but I don't want my whole picture, my whole sun catcher to be that because some of the beauty is that there's a little bit of color that's not mixed and there is some that is mixed. So I think I feel pretty good about how much I've mixed this. What do you think? You like it? I think I do. So I'm going to let this dry. And when it's dry, I can use it as a sun catcher. But the other thing I can do is I can make a little frame around it. Now, once your sun catcher is dry, you could cut it into a special shape. So I could cut a heart out of this and have a heart sun catcher, which I can then like tape to my window. I could also make a frame. Now I'm going to show you how I'm going to make a frame because sometimes we might not have all the materials we want at home, but it's really, really, really simple. So a frame might make it stronger because paper towels aren't super, super strong. So if I put a frame around the edge, it might help it to stay longer. It'll make it stronger. Now, I didn't have a lot of colored paper around, but I have this strip. I know you're thinking that is not enough to make a frame, Miss Claire, but I'm going to show you how I'm going to make a frame out of this. Now, I have a pair of scissors and a glue stick. Now, what I'm going to do is I am going to cut this to make my frame. And I'm going to glue the edges. You could also use tape. If you don't have glue stick, you could use tape. I have some blue tape right here, so I'll show you. Now, frames have how many sides? 4. So, you might need an adult to help you with this, but I'm going to cut 4 strips. Now imagine if you don't have colored paper around, but maybe you have a cereal box. A cereal box would make a really good frame if we cut that, cut a hole in the middle. So because I only had this strip, I'm making a frame like this. But if you have a big piece, you can cut it out and then cut the middle out. I bet you can have an adult help you. So now I have these 4 pieces. So what I can do is I can attach the corners. So I might just use a little bit of glue here. And if you have a different size, now we probably want to make the frame the size of our paper towel. So Your paper towel might be a different size than mine. So I'm just gonna use it in front of me. Look at that, I got a little corner. Now, I'm gonna look at this and I'm gonna say, okay, I'm gonna cut this right here. Perfect. Now, I'm gonna glue the other piece here. And I have just made myself a little frame. Since we're at home so much right now, we're usually at school, we have a lot more materials. We can get pretty creative with the ways that we make things. I found this scrap of paper and I'm making a frame for my sun catcher. So think about how you can use things you already have. I am close. Now, just need the one more piece. And you can let your sun catcher dry on the tray if you want, or you can lay it out somewhere else. You want to be really careful while it's wet because we don't want to rip it. We know what happens if we get paper too wet or if we get a puddle on our paper. Whew, don't want to rip that. All right. Okay, so I made my frame. It's a good frame for my sun catcher. Now, once this is dry, and my paper towel is a little bit bigger than my frame is I made, but that's okay. I can trim the edges to fit it in here. So once this is dry, see it's a little bit bigger, I can tape this on the back here. And then I have a beautiful sun catcher. And when I hold this up to the window or lay it on the window, I think it's gonna look really cool. I hope that you have enjoyed making this with me today. I think this is a pretty fun process art activity. I miss you all, and I cannot wait for us to be together in the same place, but I hope that you've had a nice time making art with me, and I miss you, and I hope that you are having a wonderful time with your family. Until next time,